Capcom, I figured that we can sit down and have a heart-to-heart. We can talk about the birds and the bees, and I can go and explain some things to you about how the world works whenever you're in love with somebody. No, I'm going to talk to you about the Resident Evil series, and if you have even one iota of an idea of what you're going to do with the franchise from here on out. As a matter of fact, over the course of the past couple years, it doesn't seem like you've had any idea of what you were going to do with it. Now, the franchise has gone from being an innovative survival horror franchise to then evolving into an action-related game that seemed to lose focus entirely on its own identity and what it was trying to do for players, and for the industry, and for its own namesake. Now, the Resident Evil series is big enough that it transcended gaming and then went into global media. It became movies, it became comics, it became CG films. It's got tons of merchandising, it has its own restaurants, it's everywhere. We all know it's a really big franchise. I would argue and say that it's my favorite video game franchise. I've made countless videos about Resident Evil, some good, some bad. This one being kind of in-between ground of just a reality check, asking a lot of questions and bringing up a lot of bullshit about this. You see, Resident Evil right now, as we know, is an action series with 5 and 6, those entries right there being the ones that everybody kind of looked at and was like, what the fuck are you doing? This isn't exactly the kind of Resident Evil gameplay or, atmosphere or anything like that that I've ever been looking forward to. As a matter of fact, this is kind of just lacking in every department. Now, one of the reasons that we're getting games like that is because they said that with the Resident Evil remake on GameCube, that sales for that were not that great. So we decided to go and shift focus and then go in an action-oriented route. Now, there's evidence to that. Resident Evil 4 was actually like two completely different games. When we first saw Resident Evil 4, it was a much slower-paced, scary-ass game that actually dabbled in the paranormal. Leon Kennedy himself was walking around, and there was actual ghostly apparitions that were going around with this big fucking hook and chain and stuff, and was coming after you. There was these little dolls that were inside this one room that he was just chucking Molotov cocktails at and just lighting them on fire and stuff, because there was a whole bunch of them. They were just stabbing him or what the fuck ever. But it was interesting to see that it was going that route, because it reminded me of something just completely different. And, we weren't dealing with the undead and, biological terror and stuff like that. Now we were dealing with, some unknown threat. And then there was, that black, squirmy shit that was, going all over the place that looked like shadows and all sorts of other stuff. It was pretty fucking crazy, but it looked really good. While it was a big-time departure, I was greatly interested in the game. Then we got the more action version of Resident Evil 4, where, we have an entire village of people that are infected, but are still intelligent and relatively self-aware. And then there was, a cult and stuff like that, and, the game is fantastic. But at the same point, that was a big turning point for the series, because Resident Evil 4 blew up, while the remake did not. Now, there's a lot of factors I can go and say about that, number one, Resident Evil Remake didn't get splashed onto the PlayStation 2, where it had a much, much, much bigger install base, where it was obviously going to flourish. The Resident Evil Remake also hasn't been put on every single known device, every single platform, all over the place, a million times over. As a matter of fact, Resident Evil 4 is getting the Ultra HD, super remastered edition on Steam, which will be absolutely fantastic, even though we've had a really nice HD version on there already. But regardless, I'm glad it's going to be showing up on Steam. But, the Resident Evil Remake to me is the quintessential Resident Evil game. It's exactly what I want to see the franchise go with. They took everything about the original game that made it really cool, and then they built upon that, and they fixed a lot of things about it, and it was just great. I mean, even now, visually, that game is stunning, and it is fucking horrifying. The first time I ever came across a Crimson Head, I was like, holy shit. The fact that they have additional areas in there, additional bosses, they revamped all the cutscenes and the dialogue in the game so that it wasn't as campy and stuff. Even though I enjoyed that aspect of it, but, if they're going in a more serious tone, it's understandable that they're going and doing something like that. And that to me is what you do when you remake a game. You go from the ground up and you just balls out do that. But ever since Resident Evil 4, it was all action and then less survival horror, and then even more action and much less survival horror. And that, to me, was kind of ruining what made the series so special to begin with. They kept on saying that they wanted to go after the Call of Duty audience, but the Call of Duty audience was playing Call of Duty. The Resident Evil audience wanted Resident Evil, so you were just trying to tell them what they were going to like because there was a lot more people that liked this other thing. And to me, that's whenever you're starting to take variety and originality out of your namesake, and you just end up becoming what the fuck you are right now. And truth be told, the Resident Evil franchise, along with things like, you know, Street Fighter and Devil May Cry and shit like that, are Capcom's money makers. But again, they've lost their way on all their key franchises. That could be a completely different topic for another time, but focusing on Resident Evil is probably their biggest cash cow that they have right now, in my opinion. Just by looking at the numbers and just, you know, how starstruck that a lot of people have gotten over it. But, you know, right now, you had Resident Evil 6 that they spent some of the most money that they ever did on any one title. It also had one of the biggest teams, and to them, it didn't perform up to task. Now, it sold well. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that this game was a flop by any stretch of the imagination, but they had higher hopes and higher ambitions for what this was going to do sales-wise, and it did not meet that. So then, you know, that right there means that they have to do something different. So then we got to hear rumblings that they were going to go back to survival horror. I mean, when Shinji Mikami himself goes on and decides he's working on The Evil Within, and he's going to just focus on survival horror, you know, and the stuff that made the Resident Evil series what it is, that kind of sets off some bells and whistles inside of their fucking noggins of, oh gee, maybe we really need to do this. And they didn't get that clue for some reason for the millions of fans around the world that have been saying that they wanted a survival horror game again. And they called it a niche market. This is a smaller market, and they want to go for a much bigger market. That's how you go and you take the ground from underneath, and there's nothing for it to stand on anymore. Because you decide that you were going to forego everything that made this franchise. You were going to forego the entire loyal fan base and try to go after people that weren't playing your game. So, right now, you have no audience. And you're just going off a namesake at this point. Now, with the installment of Resident Evil Revelations, which that came out on Nintendo 3DS, but then got re-released on Wii U, Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and stuff like that, we got to see a more true-to-form Resident Evil game that was all about survival horror. I've played through the game multiple times now, both on handheld and on console, and I love the game to death. I think that it's fun as shit. I like the fact that the story is kind of goofy and off the wall again. You know, I've laughed at moments of the game, even though I know that it was trying to be serious, but it was just kind of goofy and just corny in a way. But I like the fact that it was, the environments again were scary. The monsters were really terrifying. I was just like, holy shit, alright, that's pretty damn cool. Control was spot on, graphically looked really nice, the music again was really good, added to the atmosphere and stuff like that, and you know, it was all ambient and shit. I'm like, alright, that's exactly what I want to see. But the thing is, they gotta push titles like that, you know? And the thing is, we're hearing all these rumors about Resident Evil 7, and considering the fact that every single Resident Evil game that's come out, 2 and 4 being like the big ones, where while they're making the game, it's just going in all these different directions, and they change up things throughout the course of it until you get something completely new. And I'm wondering if that's happening with Resident Evil 7 right now, considering the fact that internally Capcom is trying to go and hire on more people, because every time that they've decided that they're going to go and outsource any of their projects somewhere, it hasn't really gone all that well. With the Resident Evil franchise, we saw them go and outsource the game, and we got Operation Raccoon City. I'm hoping that they're smart enough to know that that's the last time that they should do something like that. That just turned into a fucking disaster, because it wasn't Resident Evil. Not even remotely, sort of, kind of, maybe at all. It just wasn't. And it's arguably the worst Resident Evil game. Like, arguably the worst. Even worse than Gaiden. Like, it's pretty fucking bad. But the thing is, there's still a very big time die-hard fan base. Die-hard enough that you still have a person like me, despite all the stupid shit that the company has done, and, you know, losing track and focus that this franchise has, I'm still interested in the series because I know what it can be. I mean, I've dedicated tons of hours of my day of talking about Resident Evil, playing Resident Evil, researching Resident Evil, and just looking up stuff. From thinking about all the stuff that, like, the Resident Evil Beta, and Resident Evil 1.5, and Resident Evil 3.5, the original version of 4, and shit like that. You know, I was happy to hear that there's, like, a really kick-ass Doom mod of Resident Evil 4 that looked really fucking killer. I like the fact that somebody's remaking Resident Evil 2, and it looks phenomenal. Again, this is all stuff you ought to look up. But, you know, I look up stuff like that, and I just wonder, I'm like, okay, if these people are getting this shit right, why can't you? I really don't understand. And there's, like, Resident Evil fan projects that are out there that people are building from the ground up, old school Resident Evil games, and they just look really cool. Off the top of my head, I can't remember the name, so I do apologize. But I've been looking up stuff about those, and I'm, like, really interested in wanting to go and check them out. But I really wonder if they're going to go and screw the pooch again. Because despite the fact that they said, well, we want to take it down the route of survival horror, but I think that they might be saying that to try to build hype to a certain extent, because this is Capcom. This is a company that doesn't actually focus on what the hell their fans are saying. They just think that they know better. But you don't apparently know better, because that's why we're here right now having this discussion. And I understand that I'm not a very important individual in the world, and my opinion means all of what? Jack shit? Yes. That's absolutely fine, but I still feel the need that I want to go and voice these kind of concerns and bring up these facts about the series. Because I'm somebody that does understand the series quite well, because I've been there since the beginning. You know, this all started on PlayStation 1, and Sega Saturn, and stuff like that, and PC. And I've been there since the beginning. And here I am today. So I can say this. Look at the Resident Evil remake. Look at everything about that and emulate that. Because that's exactly what I would like to see. If you need to combine that with Resident Evil Revelations, by all means go and smash them together. Because that would be ideal. We need survival horror games. You're supposed to be the staple survival horror game franchise. You know, you and Silent Hill and Fatal Frame and stuff like that are supposed to be, like, you know, at that mountaintop. You know, toss in, like, Dead Space if you want. The original at the very least. 3, not so much. But point being that Resident Evil needs to go back to being Resident Evil. It can't go to become Call of Duty, because eventually this franchise is going to be completely dead. Your cash cow will be completely dead. The fan base will then go move on. We will have other alternatives, we will have other options. And that will all be your undoing. But to keep the genre alive, we do need a franchise like Resident Evil. This is how the entire industry will know, yes, there are people that like games like this, so people have to maintain focus and interest in stuff like this. You know, if you just completely abandon the idea, but it's kind of hard not to, whenever the quality completely falls off a cliff. Smacks its head every single way that it possibly can on the way down and just splat. Just like Wile E. fucking Coyote. Super genius. Unfortunately, there's no super geniuses at Capcom right now, unless you get your heads out of the fucking sand. Anyway, I just want to go and say all that stuff. I'm hoping that them hiring on a bunch of people, that they'll be able to go and right the ship. They've shown signs of being able to do that, but they've also shown an equal amount of signs that they have no fucking clue what they're doing, and they're trying to go and basically peddle their wares to everybody and anybody instead of just their core audience, which is who they need. And that's how essentially they will grow, is by being badass with that audience. Boom. There you go. That's how it became what it is today, not because it was Call of Duty. So, I'm curious. All of you have opinions about the franchise. Many of you may say something along the lines of, well, unfortunately, I've just given up on Capcom, I've given up on Resident Evil, and quite frankly, I could give a damn less. I'll just play the old titles, and I can understand somebody saying something like that. I can also understand somebody saying something like, but I actually think the newest Resident Evils are really good. 4, 5, and 6 are some of my favorite Resident Evils in the entire world, and I don't see anything wrong with it, and I think that everybody is just going and taking these games and making them sound a lot worse than they are. And then there'll be the like-minded individuals like me who feel the same exact way that the series has lost its way and has become a fucking mess and needs to go back to the drawing board, because that exactly is what is going to turn this franchise back into being a fucking golden egg again. So, either way, any opinions and stuff like that are welcome. It's a nice little discussion piece, I think so. Anyway, this is AlphaOmegaSin. As always, nerds, nerdettes, and gamers. Game the fuck on. And remember, eat your Jill sandwiches.